You ever try to hold sleep like a prize and wake up more tired than before? Do you believe the universe owes you a plan that always includes safety and certainty? If control is the currency you were taught to trade in, what happens when the market collapses and your hands are empty? Breathe now. Feel the weight of your eyelids, the small heat of the room on your face, the slow hush behind your thoughts. I am not asking you to surrender your life to chaos. I offer an invitation to discover a trust that is not gullible, a trust that does not need to own outcomes to be whole. Tonight you will hear teachings rooted in the Dharma that cultivate a steady confidence that carries you into sleep and into morning. In a few minutes, your habitual gripping will soften, your mind will find a floor that does not shift with events, and a way of resting inside the plan of things may begin to open. Are you willing to remember the part of you that has always known how to land? Let us begin. You live in a culture that promises predictability, results, and efficiency. And so you learn to design your life around schedules, checks, and guarded expectations. That very training becomes a pressure around the chest, a tightening in the throat, an insomnia that comes disguised as responsibility. You wake at 3 a.m., replaying conversations, rehearsing outcomes, repairing every imagined mistake. The more you secure, the more fragile the feeling becomes. You may have been praised for being reliable, for being the one who keeps the plans, and yet inside there is a subtle erosion. Children clap for the planner. The world praises the controller. Meanwhile, your nights shrink. There is a dissociation between the plan and the heart, a slow exhaustion that no productivity hack will fix. I want to hold that truth with you and say, gently, that the practice here is not abandonment of skill. It is a reorientation of where your energy rests while you act. When you were small, you learned to make sense of danger by learning rules. Your parents, teachers, and the media taught you early that safety comes from correct steps. You internalized lists and checkboxes. You might have been Maya in grade school, quietly checking your homework twice, or Daniel, who stayed up sequencing every detail of a family trip. You became expert at contingency. Later, a loss exposed the limits of your lists. Maybe a sudden illness took a parent. Maybe a job you built dissolved. Maybe a friend you trusted left. These moments showed you that plans are provisional. In the years that followed, you studied, trained, got a degree, built a life skill, and learned new systems. Yet after a certain night when everything rearranged itself, you felt a hollow lesson had arrived that no diploma could remove. That hollow is important. It is the place from which true inquiry begins. As a young adult, you sought teachers. You sat with Lama Tenzin in a small hall where incense braided with sunlight. You listened to Sara in a kitchen talk, who said simply that uncertainty is not the enemy. You met Thomas, who taught breath work by the river, and May, who brought tea and calm presence. Amita taught you to recite the refuges in the mornings. Jonah showed you how community can steady. Brother Kaito offered work practice to ground your hands. And Dr. Alvarez explained how vagal tone responds to paced breathing. These people did not erase your pain. They redirected your energy from sheer clutching toward a practice of returning, again and again, to what is present. Their names appear because practices are shared in relationship, and because trust grows in the web of others, not in isolation. Surrender is the concept we will hold up now, but not as a romantic surrender that means giving up or resigning to passivity. Surrender here is a deliberate placement of intention that lets action arise from clarity rather than from fear. It is different from resignation. Resignation is dull acceptance, a closing of the heart that says nothing will change, and therefore do not bother. Surrender is dynamic. It is a trustful stance that allows you to act, to weep, to plan, and to sleep, without making those actions your identity. Picture a river that holds fallen leaves without clutching them, that flows with tides yet keeps its own course. The water does not despise the stones. The river is present to whatever comes while remaining itself. That is the metaphor the Buddha and later teachers often use to show how presence can allow things without being consumed by them. To make this practical, consider one simple practice that anchors surrender without requiring abandonment of competence. This practice has 3 steps. First, notice where you are gripping physically in the body, perhaps in the jaw, sternum, or belly. Second, name the small story your mind is telling, perhaps a rehearsal of the worst case. Third, breathe in for 4 counts and out for 6, imagining the exhale offering the story back to the space around you. This is not denial of the story. It is a reallocation of your attention, so you can choose from a clearer place. The process in detail involves timing and repetition. For 3 minutes each night, set a timer, move your awareness to the points of tension, label the dominant thought, and then do 6 rounds of the paced breath. That structure trains the nervous system gradually, so the habit of gripping relaxes. Practice is not merely technique, it is encounter. Let me show you a brief exchange to illustrate how simple guidance feels in a session. Teacher speaks softly. "How does your chest feel tonight?" You answer, "It is tight, like someone closed the door on it." Teacher, "What do you want to happen?" You pause, "I want to stop imagining catastrophe." Teacher, "Breathe with me." 4 out and 6 together now. You breathe and the room listens. This dialogue has 2 functions. It names experience and invites action. It is not an abstract suggestion, but an exact practice to rehearse. After you try the practice a few times in the day and before sleep, you may notice the tension ease. Small changes accumulate. The nervous system, when given consistent cues, shifts from alarm to regulation. That is the law of biology meeting the wisdom of the Dharma. The next section will give you a more extended guided practice you can use tonight to fall asleep with a mind that trusts itself to meet the world. Sit or lie in a comfortable posture and soften the jaw and shoulders. Place a hand on the belly and sense warmth. Feel the texture of the bedsheet or chair beneath you, the faint hum of distant traffic, the taste of air in your mouth, the whisper of clothes against your skin. Name 5 points of sensation with curiosity, as if cataloging the world for the first time. Then bring attention to a single soft point behind the breastbone, as if a small lantern is lit there. Inhale and imagine the lantern brightening. Exhale and imagine the light warming the edges of the heart. When thoughts arise, do not push them away. Do not feed them. Visually allow them to drift like clouds across a wide sky. This is not avoidance. This is bearing witness. Here is a compact technical description of the breath procedure for you to memorize and apply. Inhale quietly for a count of 4. Hold for 1 natural beat if it feels easy, then exhale for a count of 6. Repeat for 6 cycles twice daily and before sleep. This trains the parasympathetic response through extended exhalation and temporal coherence between heart and breath. Keep sessions short and consistent rather than rare and long. In the room with you right now, imagine a short exchange that happens in many Sangha sessions. Student, what if I stop planning and everything falls apart? Teacher, you still plan, but you learn not to live inside the plan. Student, how do I start? Teacher, start with 2 minutes and a breath. The exchange is not theoretical. It is a rehearsal that anchors behavior in small, practical steps. Let us examine karma in a way that loosens guilt and cultivates agency. Karma in the Buddhist sense refers to intention and the ripples intention makes, not cosmic punishment. Intention sets emotion. If you act from a place of fear, the habitual patterns continue. If you act from a place of care and attention, you change the trajectory over time. Think of planting seeds in soil. You do not control the weather, and yet you can tend the soil, choose seeds, and water them regularly. Karma is about this tending. I want to share an illustrative story. There was a woman named Priya who worked late nights at a clinic. She habitually rushed through meals and snapped at loved ones. She felt trapped by exhaustion and regret. One evening, she began a practice of pausing before each interaction. She would place a hand over her heart and ask, "What is my intention here?" She shifted from reactive to responsive. Over months, her relationship softened. Her workload remained, but her experience changed. The patients noticed the difference, and a nurse named Omar began to emulate her. The ripple moved outward. This is how karma is not a ledger of punishment, but a cultivation of intention. When you think of purification, you may imagine incense or ritual. Those are useful, but the process is also psychological. A credible short purification process involves 3 steps. Recognize the harmful pattern, make an intention to change, and rehearse the new action daily for a month. This is measurable and credible. Count your rehearsals and log them for 30 days. Tiny, consistent shifts alter neural pathways. Now I will introduce Shunyata, emptiness, a term that frightens many until it is clarified. Emptiness does not mean nothingness. It means lack of inherent fixedness. Everything arises dependently. The chair you sit in is not an isolated entity, but a confluence of wood, labor, design, and time. You are not a separate, unchanging self, but a stream of processes. This understanding frees you because it dissolves the tyranny of the fixed identity that says, "I must be this way." Emptiness opens a field of possibility because if things are interdependent, then changing oneself changes others. Imagine the metaphor of sky and clouds to feel Shunyata. The sky is open and spacious. It allows clouds to pass and to form. Each cloud has texture, color, and motion, but the sky remains spacious and allows change. This spaciousness is not absence. It is room for experience. Without that room, the clouds would collide and harden into storms. Emptiness is the inner sky that allows events to move without making you break. Try a short exercise to access Shunyata in perception. Close your eyes and listen to 3 distant sounds. Note each sound without attaching a label. The sounds arise, then dissolve. Notice how you are not the sounds. You are the ear and the field in which sounds appear. This is an experiential entry point into the doctrine of emptiness. As we explore non-self and dependent origination, you may meet resistance, because letting go of a strong self feels like losing a friend. Hold compassion for that fear. Consider a clinical example. A person with rigid self-narrative may feel strongly threatened by change and react with anxiety or aggression. Gentle inquiry helps. For instance, by asking, "What story do you carry about yourself that informs this fear?" Observe how the story was formed by parents, by social messages, and by repeated reinforcement. Then practice small shifts in behavior that test the story, so the mind updates its map. Here is a brief dialogue that models such an exchange. You say you are always the one who must fix things. What if you try bringing presence without solving? Patient: I am terrified. I will be judged. Therapist: presence will not dissolve boundaries. You can practice with a small, safe task. The dialogue demonstrates how inquiry opens space rather than erasing responsibility. When the self softens, the impulse to secure everything loosens. You can still make plans and fulfill duties, but those actions come from an open heart rather than from compulsive guarding. This is interdependence translated into practice. The more you see your life as part of a broader web, the easier it is to take compassionate risks, to apologize, to reach out, and to rest. We now move to Bodhicitta, the arousal of the intention to awaken for the benefit of all. This is not an abstract vow reserved for monastics. It is a practical orientation you can take in small ways. Bodhicitta is a decision to work with your own suffering and the suffering you encounter in others. It reframes waking actions as service. When you choose to bring presence to your family dinner or to listen fully to a colleague, you are practicing bodhicitta. Consider the lives of 3 figures to ground this idea historically and practically. The Buddha taught compassion as the root of ethical action. Shantideva wrote about exchanging self and others with blunt honesty. A contemporary teacher like Pema Chodron offers pragmatic tools for working with fear in daily life. In your city, a community organizer like Amita might model bodhicitta by creating a neighborhood program that offers listening circles. In your workplace, Jonah might begin a weekly check-in that softens stress.
These named acts show how bodhicitta spreads through ordinary gestures. Let us include an intimate dialogue to make the vow concrete. Student: I want to be kinder, but I feel depleted. Teacher: start with one small vow. What will you do tomorrow? Student: I will offer 30 minutes to a neighbor. Teacher: keep it small and exact. The exchange shows that service begins where capacity and intention meet. A practical commitment you can make tonight is to take a simple vow for 1 week. Choose one small act that benefits another with no expectation of return. Record it each day and notice how your heart responds. Small vows recalibrate motivation and anchor bodhicitta in daily life. There are moments of tension I want to point out because change is not smooth. Moment of tension 1 comes when your plan collapses unexpectedly. A project you believe secures your future fails. The inner voice rushes in, accusing you of incompetence. You remember a parent saying, "You must provide," and the pressure tightens. This moment asks you whether you will constrict further or use the breathing practice to create space. You may remember a childhood scene and a decision must be made to call a friend rather than ruminate. The inner conflict is sharp, and the choice to pause and breathe is
radical in its simplicity. Moment of tension 2 occurs in relationships when you offer compassion and it is rejected. Perhaps you apologize and your gesture lands cold. Your pattern is to withdraw or to pursue for validation. This moment pulls at old wounds and triggers stories about being unlovable. The practice here is to notice the hurt without leaping into reactive scripts and to bring curiosity to the other person without erasing your boundary. The decision to stay open and to set a limit tests your intention in a real-world context. Moment of tension 3 is the bodily panic that arises before sleep when images of failure flood in. The chest tightens, the breath becomes shallow, thoughts loop like a scratched record. The technique is to place attention on 2 sensory anchors, perhaps the hand on the belly and the sound of evening wind, and to repeat the 6-count exhale until the body finds a rhythm. The act of labeling the thought as just a thought blunts its power and allows sleep to arrive. Moment of tension 4 is moral doubt, when you recognize that your routine actions cause harm in small ways. Perhaps habitual consumer choices or speech that marginalizes another person. You confront the complexity of complicity and want to change but fear the cost. The practice is to take one measurable adjustment and to experiment for 30 days. The tension is work, and it refines your ethics through action. These tensions are not obstacles to enlightenment, they are training ground. The next sections emphasize how commitment in small steps rewires habit and deepens trust in a larger unfolding. 1 month later, you will notice a small but tangible shift. You wake less at odd hours, and when you do, you reach automatically for the breath exercise instead of the phone. You may have said a single honest thing to someone you had avoided and noticed the exchange was less catastrophic than expected. You have kept the vow of a small service for a week and then extended it. You might see that the community of practice begins to matter. You message Sarah and she replies with curiosity. You attend one evening with Lama Tenzin and feel recognized. This month is about habit formation and about the first evidence that trust is trainable. You are not transformed entirely, but you have a lived example of steadiness to point to. 3 months later, the telescope of life shifts and you can see wider patterns. Your nervous system responds to stress with shorter spikes. Your relationships bear more honesty and fewer eruptions. You have integrated the daily breathing routine into your evenings and sometimes mornings. You might become a model for someone at work like Thomas, who now consults you about presence practices. You have begun to change small economic choices to align with compassion, and that changes how you tell your story to yourself. This period is subtle but deepening. You are learning to act from intention rather than reflex, and your community begins to mirror that change. The ripple expands, and people you named earlier, like me, Omar, and Amita, show signs of influence. Your practice becomes contagious in quiet ways.
6 months from now, the cumulative effects are visible and practical. You find yourself sleeping with less vigilance and waking with a clearer purpose. You have a few concrete achievements that were not born of frantic control, but of steady presence. You lead a small neighborhood circle or start a workplace ritual of check-ins that reduces burnout. You have measured 30-day experiments that resulted in changed habits, and perhaps a bound journal where you noted each rehearsal. Your reputation is not merely as a fixer, but as someone whom others seek for calm. You may have taken a vow more public. This could be a vow to volunteer monthly or to mentor someone in need. The ethical thread is stronger, and your relationships show more depth. The legacy of practice begins to take shape, and your daily actions become part of a living mandala that others can stand within. We close by circling back to the mandala metaphor. The mandala is not a decorative symbol only. It is a map of relation. It shows center and periphery and how action at one point influences other points. When you cultivate inner trust through breathing, presence, and deliberate vows, you are adding to a mandala of care that extends beyond your bedroom and into the city. The map is simple. Your presence is a gift. Your surrender is not defeat. It is a clearing where compassion can live. Before you go, try this 3-step practice again. Breathe in for 4, hold gently if it feels right, and exhale for 6. Do this 3 times, while naming one intention for service tomorrow. Then place a hand over your heart and say softly to yourself, "May I rest. May I be kind. May others find peace." These words are a seed. If you felt the chest unclench, even a little, pause for a moment and write in the comments, "Today I let go of," and complete the sentence with one small thing you released. This simple act helps others know they are not alone and builds a small community of practice around real moments. If you want to go deeper, subscribe here. We offer regular guides and practices rooted in Dharma and in contemporary understanding of the nervous system. Return if you find this useful, and bring a friend if you can. Remember this closing line. Solving everything is not the purpose of your life. Learning to rest in the pattern that contains you is solace. Comes not from perfect plans, but from the steady meeting of breath, heart, and intention. Sleep now with the confidence that you are part of a great unfolding, and that trust is a practice you can train. Every night you can practice coming home to the spacious place inside that
knows how to land.